Are you on edge? We live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of the Edge of Everyday podcast, which drops bi-monthly on all your favorite podcast platforms. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and tough talk about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. Real talk with real people that sparks provocative invitations to leap out of what's safe. Sandra Bargman, on the Edge of Every Day. Thanks for listening. Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Bargman, and welcome back to the Edge of Every Day, now streaming on all your favorite podcast platforms and at maximizeu.life. Are you a change maker? Do you walk between worlds, between cultures, between systems? If you answered yes to any of these questions, the Edge of Every Day is the place for you. In a nutshell, this podcast is about pushing boundaries and exploring rough edges. Through conversations and shared stories with friends and colleagues, it's my hope that we can begin to understand our edges. And what I mean by edges is those places where we are fearful. Those places where we are resistant to change, those places where paradox and contradicting identities live in our beliefs and in our understandings, both individually and collectively. We live in edgy, challenging times. We cannot keep looking away from the ugly, from the difficult, and silence is no longer an option. Life isn't black or white, it's both, and I want to talk about that. I want to face the tension of paradox, and I want to engage in the hard conversations. I want to explore the rough edges between our light-filled brilliance and our dark, shadowy corners. Because the more we recognize our own edges and get real about them, the more we can help others to do the same. And that, I fully believe, can help to change the world. So, thanks again for tuning in. Today, we are live in the Hive with Seth Gordon, theater director, professor, and author of the new book, Crossroads in the American Theater, New Leaders in a New Age. This book is a must-read for theater geeks, theater lovers, and for those who understand the importance of art and the communal experience of live theater in these dark and challenging times. The American theater is at a crossroads. After a worldwide pandemic and the social reckonings that took place just before and around the pandemic, the way nonprofit theaters lead their institutions and produce their plays is being reexamined almost from scratch. As we witness the collapse of institutions and systems nationally, in real time, media, financial, education, religion, etc., the American theater, too, has been called to evolve and to reconnect with the greater community it serves. Seth Gordon and the artistic leaders he interviews for this book reflect deeply on the future of American theater and its supporting structures. And they offer profound hope for emerging theater making. In this episode, we'll explore these questions. What is the relationship between theater, storytelling, and community? How has capitalism affected the arts? Is theater/art about making money? Or is it about knowing ourselves and the world around us more deeply? What is the role of art in a community? But in a larger sense, what is the role of art in times of resistance and unrest politically? Before we dive in, which I can't wait to do, let me share Seth's bio. Seth Gordon teaches directing and theater management in a BFA program and an online master's program, MA program, at the University of Oklahoma, where he's also developing an MFA in directing. Previously, he was Associate Artistic Director of the Repertory Theater of St. Louis and the Cleveland Playhouse, and Associate Producer of Primary Stages in New York. He has directed plays at all these institutions and many others throughout the United States. Crossroads in the American Theater is his first book. Welcome, Seth Gordon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. Thank you for coming on. And as I like to tell all of my listeners, the first thing I like to share with them is how I know my guests. And Seth and I went to college together a million years ago.
Yeah.
Yes, we are both alums of Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, which is actually my hometown. Did you know that, Seth? It was my
I
hometown?
think I knew that. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, good old
Most people from
Pittsburgh.
Carnegie Mellon or from somewhere else, but I know we have a few people.
Yeah,
I grew up in New York City.
that's right. I read that. The Bronx. Hey, I was about to do Pittsburghese, which is so not New York City. It's hard to beat that out of me. They tried at Carnegie Mellon, Seth.
Yeah.
And so, tell us, just give us quickly what you did. What was your journey at Carnegie Mellon?
Well, I was accepted as an actor. Carnegie Mellon has one of the more highly regarded drama programs in the country, and it's one of the things that I always appreciated about it is that there is an emphasis, a student emphasis for every uh, field in drama in the theater. So by the time I graduated, I knew I was a director by the time I graduated. And then there were playwrights, there were actors, there were designers of every stripe, and there were producers and there were dramaturgs, there was everything. And so I was able to graduate with a cohort of colleagues
Mm.
with whom to start my career when I moved back to New York. But for myself personally, I was accepted as an actor, and it was while I was there that I realized that acting did not seem to be the thing that I was built for and for which I was going to be very successful. And I wanted to be in the theater, and I wanted to be quite good at what I did. I wanted to have an impact. I wanted to affect my field in a positive way.
Mm.
And I had classmates who suggested that I should look at directing. And at that point, I hadn't actually been in a lot of plays. I had been in more scenes in class than I can count, but I hadn't actually been in a lot of plays.
Mm.
So I hadn't worked with a lot of directors, and I wasn't 100% sure what a director did. But as soon as I realized that the director is a person whose vision comes to life and who is responsible for taking all of these disparate elements of a production and just moving them in the right direction and in the same direction, I realized that that's actually what I tended to be doing as an actor. And it was, in fact, the
Mm.
thing that was getting in my way
Oh,
as an
interesting. I can
actor.
see that. Yeah.
And so I embraced it. And by the time I was a junior, Carnegie Mellon sat me down and said, if you take a couple of extra classes your senior year, in 5 years, you can get your MFA.
Ah,
And so I stayed an extra year and I graduated with an MFA in directing.
fabulous.
And then I slept, which I hadn't done since that meeting.
And you slept for a few months.
Yeah,
Yes, I recall that. I think all of us did that too.
yeah.
I'm curious, what classmate told you get into directing?
Well, a bunch of them actually. Who did I talk to? There's one, I'm not sure if I should even say name because there's one person who
You
I
don't have
actually
to.
have not spoken to in years, and I have no idea what she's doing now. Lovely person at the time. And then, well, a bunch of my classmates,
I love it. We
some
can
of
just
whom
leave it at that.
are, yeah, in the business as we speak,
Yeah,
and some
totally.
of whom are no longer are living lovely lives outside of our business. But
Yes,
they all, it's a very intense experience, as I'm sure you
indeed.
found.
Indeed.
And you experience
Trauma
it with these
bonding.
people. Yes. And you experience it with these people. And so it's almost like by the end of your first year, you've got somewhere between 15 and 20 brothers and sisters. And so these are people who knew me quite well
Yeah.
and probably knew me better than I knew me at the time.
Well, that's very true. I'm still very close with some of my, in touch with many of them,
Yeah.
really close with a handful of them. And it really, I say trauma bonding to be sassy, but it really is the truth. The trauma bonding of that experience, the
Mm,
intensity of it, really it was a bonding experience.
yeah.
So I'm going to move on to thank you for that. Move on to the question that I ask all of my guests. This will be an interesting one for you. What identity, Seth Gordon, do you lead with?
Oh my goodness. Uh, what would be an example of an identity? I'm not 100% sure
Well,
what we're defining that.
this is why I love this question, because it means so many different things to so many different people. How would you define yourself as you move through the world? What are you, some person might say, what are you attached to about your identity? Others might say, oh, how do you present yourself? Others might say, what mask do you wear when you enter a room? All of those things, are applicable.
Yeah. I think I tend to be pretty pliable in that way. I have a tendency to walk into a room, feel out where I'm needed. And that's the mask, if that's the right word that I
I
put on.
love this answer.
But in the last couple of years, you mentioned my bio. I was in the field doing theater for many, many years. And then
Mm.
about 6 years ago, I pivoted just in time for the pandemic, but I didn't know that yet.
Right.
I pivoted to education, to academia, to teaching,
Mm.
to making sure that the next generation of theater people, as you put it, love it and geek out on it just as in the same very positive way that I did and have and still do. And so I think another role that I play quite often now is that of mentor.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, with your breadth of experience, of course. And boy, do we need mentors. Boy, do we need mentors in this world today.
Yeah. And my students are constantly showing me how badly they need it and how much they're doing just fine without me at the same time. Uh, I was speaking with another colleague from another school this morning, just like this on Zoom.
Mm.
And he mentioned, lamenting the fact that his students knew nothing about this playwright, great playwright, knew nothing about this great playwright. And when are they going to learn this stuff? And I said, it's interesting because when it comes to new plays, my students are constantly showing me up. There's this
Mm.
wonderful website called NPX,
Mm.
and you look like you are familiar with it. It's possible for just about any playwright to post their plays on this website and allow their plays to be available to anyone interested in loving and geeking out on theater. And so I had a hand a couple of years ago in arranging for the University of Oklahoma to get a uh, institutional membership so that our students didn't have to pay for it. You have to pay to be on this website. And now, if you're a student at OU, if you're within our Wi-Fi, you could just call it up for free. And
Wow.
so they mine this thing and are constantly coming up with plays by playwrights I've never heard of, plays that I've never heard of that they think are the most, brilliant thing since whatever. And so they're doing just fine introducing themselves
Hmm.
to our industry and to the theater and to the art form. And they're also, very young people hungry for experience.
Yeah. Well, this plays, it's a great seg into your book. I found it interesting to read. First of all, let me just say, listeners, I adored this book. I read this entire book, except for a couple of interviews, and it is a full book, let me tell you. But I teared up. I mean, I was deeply moved, Seth. I was moved by the selection of artistic leaders that you pulled in for interviews. I was moved by your panelists, moved by what you said at the beginning of every interview. Your introduction was fabulous by itself. We could have a whole podcast on that. I share all this with you listeners that really this is a book that you will enjoy and be inspired by. But but also you don't have to be a person in the theater to really full time to really enjoy this book. It's very inspirational in a variety of ways. But back to what brought me to that was, and we'll get you, you can talk about your book more fully in a second. I just wanted to make the connection of I don't know who can't remember who talked about it, or and perhaps a handful of the interviewees talked about it, but the development of the plays and the importance of new plays coming in and how they're produced and the relevance of new plays in the industry in outside of New York City rather than the development of new plays rather than pulling from New York City into the nonprofit LORT arena. That's something I definitely want to touch on, but maybe you can weave that in with this question. Tell us about the whole concept of the book, what spurred the idea and what it explores.
Sure. Uh, well, I'm not sure how much your listeners are familiar with what nonprofit theater is, but going back all the way to the very beginnings of Western settlement in this country, and even before it was a country, uh, theater was seen as a business, a form of capitalist enterprise,
Mm.
just like anything else.
Mhm.
And one did it to make a buck. And even, the night that Abraham Lincoln was shot, he was watching a play. And the play he was watching was being put on by a bunch of traveling players who were not terribly unlike the traveling players who are dramatized in Hamlet. They go from town to town and they, for a fee, put on a play for you. And then that's all the business they can drum up in that town. So they go to the next town and they put on a
Mhm.
play for you. And usually there's one person who's in charge of the money. And very often it's also the person who plays the lead role in the play. And directing for these productions usually is stay away from me and my light. And that's kind of the extent of the art of directing at that time. But most of this was about this is the skill that I have, and this is how I'm going to make money so I can put food in my mouth.
Mhm.
And that's what theater was. And it became much more normalized as a business with the advent of people who, well, the people are gone, but the organization is still there. The main organization for commercial theater in this country is the Schubert Organization,
Right. And
which
for our listeners in New York City.
yeah, yeah. And so that did a bunch of things. First of all, it codified the idea that theater is a business and its
Mm.
purpose is, like anything else, to capitalize, sell a product, and make back your investment by selling the product through the
Yeah.
profit of selling the product.
Well, we
And
love
the
our
Schubert
capitalism
brothers,
here in the United States.
yes, yes, and that's really showbiz.
Yes.
That's why they call it that. And that's what this was. And the nonprofit movement was created to mitigate two aspects of that. One being, uh, let's make theater, let's make theater seen and done the way it is in most of the rest of the world, as an art form,
Mm.
and as something that truly contributes in a positive way to society, and not just as, you know, General Motors or the McDonald's Corporation or the
Yes.
Coca-Cola Bottling Company or Apple. We are artists
Yeah.
who are here to contribute to our world and to the people around us. That, and to tie in the point you asked me to tie in here, another huge part of this was to decentralize it and to have it not emanate from New York City, where the Schubert brothers reigned supreme. And then
Mm.
when the Schubert brothers passed away, the organization they left behind, that to this day still owns and operates the majority of Broadway theaters, and is therefore still the most powerful organization in the theater in this country, if not the world. Uh, so those were the two reasons why the nonprofit theater dare I call it industry, that's really what it is now, as
It's
opposed
become,
to
yes.
artistic movement, uh, was created. It was created as an insurgent movement, and it was created to transform what we understand as the theater from being a business into being a purely creative endeavor.
Yeah, and to support communities and to
Yeah.
support actors outside of New York City and to
Yes.
give them a relationship with the community and to give them a living wage and to create resident companies and
Yes.
such.
So part of the ideal here, what part of the practical ideal was to say that you can live in Chicago, or you can live in Des Moines, or you can live in Oklahoma, or you can live in Pittsburgh, and you can make a decent living in the theater.
Hmm.
Enough, maybe to own a small house and send your kids to college like anybody. It can be a profession, and the theater can be a part of what many people refer to, and what I often refer to in the book, as the town square.
Yes.
We need, in the town square, we need a doctor, we need a lawyer, we need a school, we need a barber, we need a restaurant, we need a theater.
Yeah.
We need a place where we can
Arts.
all come into the same room together and commune
Commune.
over the same story, a story that is relevant to us.
Mm.
That's what the theater is supposed to be. That's why the Greeks actually created it. And that's what we want to get back to.
Yes.
And so the idea of commercial theater is to make money. If if your product costs $5 to make, you need to charge a minimum of $5.01. And in our world, the nonprofit theater world, we have an expense budget and a income budget that hopefully at the bottom of it has a zero. Everything
Yes.
adds up so that no one is actually earning profit from this endeavor.
Right.
Therefore, we don't worry about whether or not anyone is earning profit from this endeavor. So we can worry about what's happening on stage. We can worry about whether or not it's serving and feeding our community in the way we want it to. That was the ideal of the nonprofit theater. Then we had this thing called a pandemic that one or two of your listeners and watchers may have heard of and experienced.
Yes.
And coming out of it, the theater had it harder than many people.
Yeah. Ugh.
Restaurants can order take it, you can order takeout. So a
Yeah.
restaurant can survive that way.
Oh,
Movies can
totally.
stream, and so you can
Hmm.
watch them from home. Uh, Theater is nothing unless you have many people communing in the same room.
Yeah.
So we couldn't do it for longer than many other uh, fields.
Industries, yes.
Yeah. And so coming back, it came back rather slowly in ways that one might expect. But there was a lot of soul searching going on, in particular in the nonprofit theater world, regarding the question of why people just didn't seem to be that interested anymore.
Mm.
And I had a theory, having been in the field right up until almost that time. I haven't really left the theater, but I left it. I left working for theaters on a full-time basis when I
Mm.
came here to the University of Oklahoma in 2019. So really, you can almost count down from
Right.
when I
Like
taught my
bam.
first class to when everything shut down. Uh, was it actually the pandemic that caused all this to happen? Or is this simply highlighting
Yeah.
things that were festering,
Yes.
things that were endemic in the field, but people weren't really talking about?
Right. And we think it's B.
Yes.
I think it's B.
Yeah. Yes. So that's what the book was about. The book was
Yeah.
meant to explore how theaters are coming out of the pandemic, and in exploring that, trying to figure out what went wrong before the pandemic
Mm.
that caused so many theaters to fail to bounce back. And as you've read it, you notice that some of these theaters are really struggling, and some of them are doing pretty good.
Yeah.
And so what's the difference between the two? And that was something that I was also trying to suss out.
Right. Well, and for our listeners, the model, the nonprofit model, in getting funding, and it does that actually support the creation of art in today's world, or does that squelch the art because you're all you're worried about is keeping the actual institution alive? And has the institution become a monster? Is it too big to, you've just got to keep feeding this institution rather than, and then falling into some sort of trap about what has worked in the past that may or may not work in today's world, particularly for the community in which you find yourself.
Uh, a lot of people, if they don't know a lot about producing plays and they're thinking about it, the first thing that might come to mind is Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland talking about putting on a show.
I love that. Yes.
And so
Let's put a show on in the barn.
what can be simpler than that? And perhaps to the point we're talking about here, what could have a lower overhead
Yeah.
than putting on a show in the barn? So, and that is how, when you think about some of the largest now and most respected nonprofit theaters in this country, and I'll call out a few of them, and depending on where your listeners are, they may know them.
Mhm.
Arena
Mhm.
Stage in Washington, D.C., the Goodman Theater in Chicago, something that is actually called the Center Theater Group, but many people know it as the Mark Taper Forum
Yeah.
in Los
In Los
Angeles.
Angeles.
The two that I worked for, not quite as big as that, but they're the major nonprofit theaters in their towns, the Cleveland Playhouse and the Repertory Theater of St. Louis.
Mm.
So theaters like this, they started actually about as small as Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland getting together and putting a puppet show on in the barn. And then they were very successful because they were providing people with the community connection that people knew they wanted,
Mm.
but didn't really have.
Yeah.
And so that necessitated finding a larger place to go. And so that necessitated things that are a little bit more bureaucratic than Mickey and Judy
Yeah.
putting things on in a barn, like getting a certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
Uh, and then if you're creating a nonprofit theater model, you need to get yourself a 501c3 tax status. That involves hiring a lawyer.
Right.
In order to have this nonprofit status, you need a board of
Board of
directors.
directors. Oof.
In order to pay for all this, since we're not worried about the bottom line. Well, one of the reasons we're not worried about the bottom line is because as a nonprofit organization, it is legal for us to solicit donations. You can't donate to Coca-Cola. You can't donate to Google. You can invest in them, but you can't donate to, who would want to do that anyway, but you can't donate to them. You can donate to a nonprofit. So in order to have people donate to your nonprofit, you need a staff that solicits and collects these donations. Once the money starts to come in, you need a business manager with his adding machine or her adding machine who is figuring out, how to create that budget that has a zero at the bottom. More and more, you are creating an industry
Yeah.
that in the book I refer to as the nonprofit industrial complex.
Complex. Yeah.
Before you know it, you need an even bigger theater.
Yeah.
Now you need to pay for that theater. You need to pay the mortgage on that theater. You need to pay the maintenance staff
Or
for
the
that
rent. Yeah.
theater.
Hmm.
And now we can't afford all the people on our payroll. So who are always the first people to go?
The artists, the actors. Yeah.
So the dream of having a nation of theater artists making their living throughout the country,
In
serving
residence.
in residence, stopped happening within somewhere in the vicinity of 30 to 40 years after this movement really started. The movement
Yeah.
started, as I was saying, it was an offshoot of our winning World War II and
Yeah.
feeling like we can do anything. We
Mm.
created an interstate highway system. We created all these nonprofit theaters. They grew exponentially. The NEA, back when they were writing checks for people, and the Ford
Ouch.
Foundation
Yeah.
actually also, just thought I'd slip that in there. The Ford
Yes.
Foundation also played a huge role. They actually no longer give any money to theater, but they played a huge role in the early years,
Yeah.
writing some really big checks to some very small theaters and making them big theaters.
Yeah. Make,
So
making
all of
them
this,
oak trees.
yes, yes,
I
yes,
love that. The acorns and the oak trees. I love that.
yes. So people grew to a point where they needed as much food to feed themselves as they did to feed their communities,
Yeah.
perhaps more so. And they reached a point where they perhaps were not serving their communities in the way that they were necessarily founded to. And the communities felt that. And when it came time for the pandemic to happen, they then voted with their feet
Mhm.
and said, why was I putting on a tie and going out to something that I didn't really connect with to begin with,
Yeah.
when I could just pop some popcorn in my own kitchen,
Right.
get
Right.
in my pajamas after work,
Turn on Netflix.
and yeah, watch a movie, which if I'm bored with it, the actors won't be offended if I just click to something else.
Right.
What do they know?
Yeah.
It's just easier. So
Well,
these are people who did not feel the kind of connection. If they did, they would have come back. Did
well,
not
there's
feel the kind of connection to their organizations that the organizations were founded to provide them.
well, there's just so much to unpack there. The loyalty of the theater to the community, and vice versa. The loyalty of the
Yeah,
community to, and which of course may or may not translate into subscriptions, but also, this, I'm going to seg into my next here. One of the statements that you made that really hit me so hard out of the gate in your introduction was, our society fundamentally undervalues theater and live art experiences. To your point about popping popcorn and turning on Netflix. I mean, and I find the irony of the who was it? Oscar Eustace, New York Shakespeare Festival artistic director, who said the it's essential form of democracy. Theater is an essential form of democracy, and the irony that under this regime that democracy is under attack, that the arts are under attack, and that, I mean, it just speaks volumes to me, the metaphor of the implosion. Implosion's too big of a word. Some are beginning to thrive again, but the reevaluation of the nonprofit theater world coinciding with federal funding being taken away, with democracy being under attack. The whole idea of the democracy of live theater having a problem. I mean, who's going to Broadway these days? I mean, who can afford going to Broadway these
yeah.
days? I mean, shows that are closing right and left. I haven't been to I've been to a handful of Broadway shows in 5 years. I'm in the theater.
Mhm.
You know, if I get invited, if I get special tickets, if I get if I can go on a preview, great. Otherwise, not so much. Not going to go. So the reevaluation of the well, I'm moving into another question about the level of production of these places and how that has mushroomed, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, what are your thoughts on, the democracy, the society fundamentally undervaluing theater and live art experiences?
Yeah. Well, yes, I want to answer that, but I also just want to emphasize, because I've been such a downer for the past half hour or so, and I just want to
I don't
say
think so. We're ultimately hopeful. We're going to get there, people. We're going to swing back to
that's,
hopefulness.
yeah, that's the part that I wanted to emphasize here, that I feel like if the town square, as we put it, if City Hall were on fire, everybody would show up with a bucket of water to help. And so that's what I feel like I'm doing. I feel
Yeah.
like something is wrong. And I love the theater. It has fed me throughout my life.
Mm.
And so I want to help. And
Yeah.
that's why I did this. With regard to your question, uh, there can be little, in my view, more democratic than anywhere from 10 to 1,500 to more people sitting in a room together. The only
Mm.
criteria for who gets in the room is who bought a ticket.
Yeah.
And the only criteria for who sits together is chance, really. Uh, you click on the uh, software, the ticket buying software, and you see the little diagram of the house and you see what seats are available and you click on the seat you want. There's no information on whether the people sitting around you are men, women, black, white, young,
Yeah.
old. So nothing is more democratic, it seems to me, than going to a play and sharing in a story together. So that strikes me as making it something that's essential for the survival of our
It's
democracy.
wired in us. It's
Yes,
absolutely
yes,
wired in the human experience.
and potentially vulnerable
Mm.
when our democracy is threatened.
Yes.
So that's something that I'm very concerned about as well. I feel like whatever might happen uh, in whatever way the theater might be attacked, as we experience what I believe and what I think many people believe is a threat to democracy that we're experiencing at the moment, we will respond to it best from a position of strength
Hmm.
rather than a position of struggle. And so I want uh, our industry to get stronger.
Yes. Well,
And
I think calling out the problems and really being transparent about them, and that's the importance of this, is
yeah,
part of that process. I mean,
it's certainly not
as
going to survive.
unhopeful as it may sound, you can't get there without being honest about the state of
Yes,
affairs.
yes,
And this moves directly into really nicely the democracy of the actual theater itself and the creation of plays, and is part of the new future, or a rethinking or a reexamination of the process of these theaters. Is it to be to rethink, obviously, to go more in the social justice? I mean, this is the great question. Is it, is a social message at this time perhaps more important than than plays that have been done over and over and over again? That yes, we know everyone loves these, but maybe some people, younger people, are wanting something that expresses more about the times in which we find ourselves. Is social justice, is inclusivity in storytelling more important versus the entertainment value? I mean, I'm not, I love the classics, don't get me wrong. I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm riffing about what is the future. What are your thoughts on that?
well, first of all, I just want to point out that plays that are considered classics are considered that not just because they're really good plays, but also
Right.
because they
They
are
do.
always relevant.
Yeah,
And
totally.
so, for example, Oedipus, a play
Mm,
that might be considered particularly relevant today.
indeed.
Uh, and there is a very successful revival of it taking place on Broadway right now
Mm,
that came over from London. And so there's always the possibility. Death of a Salesman is about someone questioning the American dream.
yeah,
And
highly
that's,
relevant.
yeah, very timely.
Absolutely. But a new voice, is that
Oh,
important?
sure. Absolutely.
Yes, we're not negating the relevance or the importance of these pieces. Lord knows I love them,
Yeah.
but a new way of telling the story that feels, I'm particularly thinking of Gen Z, who are the people that are really, rethinking,
Yeah.
all of the systems.
I have seen a couple of examples. It doesn't happen terribly often. I wish it happened more often than it does. of instances in which a production was really perfectly suited. It's like when you try on a jacket and you think,
Mhm.
wow, this is,
And I get this in
were,
every
were
color.
they thinking specifically of me when they cut this? Uh, Plays that suited the audience that was there in the theater so
Mm,
perfectly.
yeah.
It was almost as if they spent years interviewing people and then did this performance of this production of the play. And one was, oh goodness, now I'm not going to remember the name of the play, but it was a new play, and it was at the Alliance Theater in Atlanta, which is one
Mm.
of the theaters profiled in Crossroads in the American Theater. And it was about Maynard Jackson, who was the first Black mayor of Atlanta. And I would say the vast majority of the audience voted for this man, perhaps twice, and was an Atlantan when he was mayor. And that was that play was a celebration of everything in their lives that they treasured and
Mm.
that in various ways they now miss.
Oh, I'm getting a lump in my throat. Wow. Wow,
Uh,
wow, wow.
ano- Another instance was actually just very recently at Oklahoma City Rep, which is about
Mm.
a half-hour drive from where I'm sitting right now. And I'm on their board. And we did a production of a play that has been produced all over the United States. It's called What the Constitution Means to Me.
Oh, yeah. I saw it on
And
Broadway. Yeah.
yes, and this is, among other things, a play about a woman who is struggling with the fact that her country prides itself in one that protects the individual, the rights of the individual, and she does not feel like her and her mother and her grandmother had their rights protected by this country.
Yeah.
And how do I reconcile that and still consider myself a part of this community and this society?
Yeah.
And that was one done very recently in which an audience that was a fairly diverse audience in terms of its age, its gender, its racial makeup, that felt like that play had been written the day before,
Landed. Yeah. Just landed.
especially with them in mind. That doesn't happen terribly often, but when it does, it really resonates.
Yeah. So what do you personally, I mean, I loved about everyone grappled so much with the structure, the nonprofit structure, and um, how do the artists, the artistic staff, work ultimately go to a board who are quote unquote their boss, um, who are generally speaking not of the arts, not artists themselves. I don't want to say all board members have no knowledge of art because that's simply not true, but in general are not artists and don't aren't theater makers. So what do you think? I felt like all of your interviews, they really grappled with how does that change? It does it need to be reinvented? Does it need to be updated? Does it just need to pull back and do theaters need to get smaller and less production values and get back to basics maybe? And what are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, as far as boards go, what's fascinating about the book is that one of the questions I ask, because I know it's a central issue being discussed at theaters around the country,
Hmm.
what do you make of this thing, as you just described it, where there's a staff of people who know how to make plays and they make the plays, and they report to a board of directors who don't make
Don't know
plays?
how to make plays.
Yeah, and almost to a person, every artistic director I spoke to said, well, it's a terrible situation. It's a
But my
terrible
board.
job. Yes, except my board is really terrific, and I feel so lucky.
Right. Don't piss them off.
Yeah.
Um,
So
well,
I found that fascinating.
totally. So did I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it made me think that there might be some degree of myth attached to the idea that it isn't working. and that
Mm,
actually these are people I've always, as much as they occasionally, their lack of knowledge occasionally exasperates me, they tend to be people, first of all, who are putting in a lot of time and effort for free.
for free.
And so clearly they care deeply.
Mm,
If they
hmm.
didn't care deeply, they
It wouldn't
wouldn't
be
be
there.
big.
Yeah.
And I have seen board members very quietly and asking for nothing, not even a thank you in return,
Mm,
do all sorts of things. Sometimes that costs them personally or costs their time or perhaps costs them in treasure, uh, just because that's how much they care about this theater. Things that
yeah.
sometimes they're asked to do and they go the extra mile. Sometimes they're not asked to do and you didn't even find out they did it until later.
Yeah.
So I think uh, individual board members can be really wonderful assets
Yeah.
to a
Spectacular.
nonprofit organization that is quite dependent on this system that I described. The larger question is this the system?
Yeah.
Should we be going with this system? And I was a little surprised, not necessarily in a bad way, but I was a little taken aback, perhaps is the best way to put it. In toward the end of the book, there's this thing I refer to as with a little help from my friends. And this was like a little something like a panel discussion. People who are not artistic directors, I showed them an early draft of the interviews, and I basically said, "What do you think?" And one of them was a gentleman who I have been, we've been friends for many, many years, and I admire him very much. His name is Todd London. And I knew him when I was at Primary Stages, and he was literally around the corner as artistic director of New Dramatists for many
Yeah.
years.
Wow.
And he was the one who said, the fact is, this whole idea of having nonprofit theaters basically comes from the Ford Foundation
You're right.
because they went to Zelda Fichandler, the founding artistic director of Arena Stage, and a woman who is really quite rightly given more credit for what success the nonprofit theater has experienced than many others.
Mm,
And they said, we want to donate to you. We want to give you money. We want to really make it possible for you to take this rather ramshackle 90-something seat mom and pop business you've got right now and turn it into what Arena Stage is today, I'm making this number up, but somewhere between 15 and $20 million annual operation with multiple theaters, all of which are quite beautiful in
yeah.
downtown Washington, a crown jewel of our nation's
Truly.
capital.
Truly.
But in order to do that, you need to become a nonprofit organization. You need to get 501(c)(3) tax
501(c)(3).
status. You need to have a board of directors. You need to do this thing. You need to do that thing. You need to do all these things so that basically we're taking Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland and we're putting a jacket and tie on them and we're cutting their hair and we're making them behave. And was that the right thing to do? That was kind of a fateful moment right there when
Yeah,
Zelda
no.
Chandler said, well, you know what? I am all about the that insurgent impulse that I described earlier. I
Hmm.
am all about the community impulse that I
Yeah.
described earlier. I am all about the transferring this thing called theater from a business to an art form that we talked about earlier. But I need the money.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and do all those things.
Absolutely. And it's great. You could have a financial wizard on the board, and you could have, somebody who's brilliant at building subscriber
Yeah.
lists, all these things. Um, Although that would probably be in your staff. But anyway, and people who could donate themselves. But ultimately, it just sort of comes down to probably balance. I mean, I love that you said, is it a myth?
Yes.
Is it a myth that it's actually a bad thing? And probably not. But what do you know, to what extent does how big do you need to grow?
Oh, that's an
And
amazing question. Yeah.
like, is it about the art or is it about making money? I mean,
Yeah.
how big do you need to grow?
Well, again, in the nonprofit world, we're not talking about making money. People
Well,
draw salaries, but
right.
the theater does not earn profit as the business world understands it.
And yet, what is the impulse to expand? Um,
Probably
it's uh,
a desire to serve the community in a bigger way that perhaps is
but
in
does it?
the end of, well, at the end of the day, perhaps is misguided.
Yeah,
Ego may have something to do
yeah,
with saying, when I came here, we had this budget, and now after me, we've got this budget.
right,
We
right,
had 250 seats. Now we have 500 because I brought in so many people. We needed a bigger thing. So there's that.
yeah.
Uh, and then there are multiple artistic directors who were interviewed in Crossroads in the American Theater who speculate that the theater will survive. The theater will always be what it is, but it might not be seen the way it is right now. It may not be structured the way it is right now, and my theater might not be there. And I am not entirely convinced, to quote them or to paraphrase them, that that's such a terrible thing. And that maybe we are not dying so much as we are evolving into something that, as we break on through to the other side, is going to be a better thing, or perhaps just a more appropriate thing for whatever age we're entering. Perhaps. It's very hard to conceive of the American theater without the nonprofit theaters that are there now.
Indeed.
But a lot of them are very hard to recognize from what they were 20 years ago, perhaps. The Long Wharf Theater in New Haven, Connecticut. And in that instance, I did not interview the artistic director. I interviewed the woman who at the time was board president. She's the one board president who I interviewed, and that was quite illuminating.
Mm.
But the Long Wharf Theater has made a strategic decision to give up its theater. It is a theater that doesn't have a theater. And it's called the Long Wharf Theater because it had a theater that was along the wharf at New Haven. So now,
How are
why
you a
do they call it the
theater
Long Wharf
without a
Theater?
theater? Yeah,
Yeah. And they're also, in some ways, in search of a new identity.
yeah,
But the impulse was to get back to serving the people the theater was founded to serve.
yeah.
The people of New Haven, not the ones who can afford that
Big
tickets to
ticket.
that space, not people who didn't need access to public transportation. So the fact that the theater was nowhere near any of it didn't matter.
Right.
But to really, if the people aren't coming, let's bring the theater to them. That was the idea. So theaters are finding positive ways
Mm.
to respond to their challenges.
Yeah. And that's clear. That was clear from all of the vulnerable and authentic and transparent way that all of them spoke with you. It was
Yeah,
wonderful.
I was shocked, pleasantly surprised, uh, and took wide advantage, as you can see, to the level of transparency and honesty and frankness
Yeah.
that they were willing to share with me.
It was quite something. And well, that leads beautifully into how I want to close out our conversation in that it feels as though from the honesty and the vulnerability and the transparency and everything that was shared, that everyone is committed to being available to what needs to emerge and to be a part of that and to meet the times in which we find ourselves. And for me, on the overarching understanding, how is it serving us in these dark and challenging times? Art as being, joy, creating art as being joy, it equals resistance. Going to art equals joy, equals social justice, activism. All of this lines up for me personally with meeting the dark and challenging times in which we find ourselves. And that was so hopeful and so heart expanding for me to that I took that from every single interview and from everything that you said.
Well, like I said, I did this because uh, I've loved the theater for just about as long as I can remember. I start the book by talking about the most moving experience I ever had in a theater, which is it's my favorite theater story.
Oh,
I'm
tell
reading
it, tell it, tell it, tell it.
reading the notes right before seeing something called Peter and Wendy, which is an adaptation of what you think it is, Peter Pan, a beautiful adaptation. And I'm reading about how um, the author's brother died. I think I'm trying to remember the age. I think it was 8. I think he was 8 years old. He was they were playing on ice, and the ice was thinner than they realized, and he fell in and drowned. And so Peter Pan was written, a book about the story of a young boy who won't grow up and who never grows up. And just as I read that and was overwhelmed with, you
This
should see the look
boy.
on your face right now,
I
Sam.
know.
The lights went down and the play began. And that just encapsulates why I do this,
Yeah.
why this thing that I've been doing, dreaming of doing since I was like 7, 8 years old. I'm now substantially more than that, and I'm still at it. And now I'm also making sure that people who are between 18 and 22, or perhaps beyond when we begin our graduate program next year, are going to be good at it too. That's why I do all this, to capture those moments.
Yes. The
And
cultivation of
yeah,
empathy. Ugh.
yes, empathy is why we do this. I am in rehearsal right now with a production of A Christmas Carol,
Mm.
which on one level sounds kind of like boring.
It's a
How many
favorite.
productions of A Christmas Carol are there? And then, when you think about the fact that this is the story of a guy who has kind of a sleepless night, but he learns the importance and the power of empathy,
Yeah.
that kind of changes your tune about A Christmas Carol. But that level of desire to make this a great art form because we love
Mm.
it so much and because we know how much it can enrich people as much as it's enriched us
Mm.
is why all of the people interviewed in that book are also in the theater, why they have devoted their lives to this rather nutty business that we're all in here, and why they agreed to be interviewed, and why they were so transparent and honest in those interviews. Because, like me, they love it, they see it's on fire, and they want to help pouring
Yeah.
water on the
Yeah.
fire.
Indeed. Well, Seth Gordon, I can't thank you enough for coming on and speaking about your wonderful life in the theater, your devotion to a life in theater, and this incredible book that I highly recommend listeners. Whether you're a theater geek or not, you will be inspired by this book. Thank you so much for coming on the Edge of Everyday podcast.
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was great fun. I got to talk about theater for an hour.
Yeah,
We
right?
can do worse.
Truly. Well, listen, I'm going to close out with a little paragraph that I think really spoke to me about what I'd like to see in my lifetime. It's qualified not by a sense of despair, but maybe a little sadness because I want to see it. Maybe I'm just aware of my own age, but I want to see it. I want to see it sooner rather than later. I want to see the depth of change and the growth and the future, as opposed to this moment of fighting to decide what needs to be dismantled and what needs to be worked from within and what is going to grow anew. So I feel sorry, grateful, happy, sad, and hopeful. I love it. I forget who that was. I think that was in one of the women in your on your panel.
Yes.
It just said it all about wanting, and you can say that about theater, you can say that about democracy, you can say that about what's happening globally. That things are dismantling, but at my age, I want to see what emerges, what we know the goodness that's going to emerge, and that is what keeps us hopeful. So, again, thank you, Seth, for being on the Edge of Everyday podcast.
My pleasure.
We
Thank you
can
for having me.
find you. Your website is?
I don't have a website of my own, but the University of Oklahoma's School of Drama has one, and my bio can be found there, and access to my email can be found there.
And you're on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I will include all of that in the show notes, people, and so they can find you. And I will have a link to the book. It's now, of course, you can find it on Amazon, but I'm going to suggest that you go to your local bookstore and ask them to get it. And again, all of you, all of my listeners, I am so grateful that you've spent this time with Seth and I. Thanks for listening in. And remember, you are always at the edge of the miraculous. Until we speak again, take good care.
Down on you, no man has fought.